In this episode of ReLiterated, we meet a brilliant boy named Ender Wiggin. He was basically bred to be humanity's best bet against an alien invasion, but he has to best bullies and his belligerent big brother before being brought to battle school to bone up on battling and beating the buggers. Behold, the beginning of the book, Ender's Game, on ReLiterated, the best bunch of bros bantering about books to be beheld before bedtime. Welcome to ReLiterated, the lowbrow book club of three grown-ass men reading the children's books popular in the 1990s, but with 2020's hindsight. Fair warning, we use language too mature for kids, analysis too immature for literary scholars, and ignorance too profound to be inoffensive to everyone. You can interact with us and enjoy all kinds of bonus content by searching ReLiterated on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook. Or you can ask us questions, suggest future episodes, or tell us what we've missed by sending us an email at reliterated@gmail.com. And my name is Andy, and with me are my co-hosts,
Harold
and Josh.
It is good to hear you guys again. Before we get to this week's book, I have a new segment I want to introduce called Profound Ignorance. This is going to be a segment where I acknowledge a fuck-up that I made in our last episode. There was a part in last episode where Harold started to hum Cocaine by Eric Clapton, and I mistook it for a different song. Some of you music buffs out there may have noticed that I mistook it for the wrong song. I thought it was a riff from Cream's Sunshine of Your Love, but I misnamed it as Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple.
Which is way different.
Yeah, Smoke on the Water is way different.
I mean, the fuck up you made isn't terrible, because Cream, wasn't Eric Clapton in Cream?
Eric Clapton was, yes, in Cream. I know he played guitar for him. I don't know if he was also the lead singer or whatever, but yeah, he was a member of Cream. But we're talking about da 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 down versus da 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 da. And then Smoke on the Water is completely different. That's
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he knows this now because the other day we were talking and I started doing all the different sounds in front of him because we make sound music out of our mouths even when we're in person and not recording.
Yeah, and we are practicing for that scat battle with Marky Mark and Matty Ice.
Bibbidi bop!
Oh, hell yeah.
Beat that.
Oh, we're going to get him. We're going to get him.
We're still waiting for a response on that challenge, guys.
I think they got an episode coming out pretty soon. Hopefully they'll acknowledge this challenge and not slink away from us.
Yeah, don't back down. Okay, so that business out of the way, let's get to this week's topic, and that is going to be the sci-fi classic book Ender's Game.
Gerald's Game, right?
Gerald's Gerald's Contest.
No, Gerald's Game by Stephen King. That's what I've been reading.
Gerald's Game by Stephen King. Oh, shoot. We're going to have to do an episode on a whole different book.
Did you guys read Ender's Game?
Shit. I read it.
Gerald's Game isn't even sci-fi.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, what the fuck did we pick Gerald's Game for? This is weird.
Is it even for kids?
No, it's a Stephen King book. I read Ender's Game.
He read Ender's Game. You listeners are so gullible.
Yep, I got you. I got every one of yous.
This book was written by Orson Scott Card. It was originally published in like a novelette form in 1977. Kind of, I believe, like in installments and like sci-fi publications, and then updated. Added to and republished in 1985 as a self-contained novel.
Yes, and Orson Scott Card is a card, I might say, actually.
Oh,
He's a cut up.
He's not a Roald Dahl piece of shit, but he's definitely a real piece of work, this guy.
I mean, he holds a viewpoint that is way off base, and his reasons for it are clearly his faith.
His Mormon upbringing, yeah.
Yep, clearly that.
One of them Utah Mormons, the family values people.
He makes some pretty bold statements. I mean, I'd actually like to go with one where he said that, or suggested that heterosexuals should work to overthrow a government that has marriage equality. I mean, and this is quite a quote, but he basically says that, you know, if this is a place where we force our kids to go to school and teach them that cohabitation is as good as marriage and that motherhood doesn't require a husband or a father, or which that even gets into single mothers. I mean, that's not even just talk about homosexuality, but he is staunchly against homosexual marriage, and he tries to play it off as just being that it's not marriage, you know, whatever. He says at one point that gay marriages will strike a death blow against straight people's unions. Yeah, he basically says, oh, it can't be the same as what a man and a wife have. He's just got that wild, like, gay marriage, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, you know, whatever, man.
Well, I don't know about your marriage, but my marriage is over, and it's clearly because of the gays being able to get married to each other, obviously. It just eroded the foundation.
Obviously. No, and I mean, he makes some pretty crazy statements. I mean, he supported a marriage ban in North Carolina. He says that marriage equality is not about marriage, but rather about giving the left the power to force anti-religious values on our children, and added, once they legalize gay marriage, it will be the bludgeon they use to make sure that it becomes illegal to teach traditional values in schools. You know, let me tell you something. I'm gonna come right out and say this.
Go for it.
37 years I've been alive. I am so sick and fucking tired of religious people shoving their religion down my throat and then turning around and saying, don't shove your non-religiousness down my throat, when I didn't even start the fucking conversation. You know, I mean,
preach.
Shut the fuck up. Really. Yeah. I have never been religious. Not a single point in my life, right? And constantly, I've had people tell me that, oh, well, you know, oh, you might be a good person, but if you don't believe what I believe, you know, you're going to spend eternity in hell. I'm scared of it. I don't believe in what you believe. I don't believe in hell. Okay. So but they're constantly saying stuff like that, right? I have never, well, I started at some point in my life, but I had never up into a certain point in my life, like, gone at somebody and been like, oh, well, I can't believe you believe that. And then I ended up being that way. Josh could tell you there was a time I was militant about it almost, because it was
quite.
It was annoying. Yeah. Some person said they needed help one time and handed me a card that wanted me to, like, go to Jesus, and I threw it right back at him. My point is this. No one that doesn't believe in your thing wants to hear you fucking preach to them about it. It's annoying. This literally says that once they legalize gay marriages, it will be the bludgeon they use to make sure that it becomes illegal to teach traditional values in schools. Whose values? Your values? Do those values have to be that they also carry a cross around and believe in it? Shut up. It's annoying. It's so annoying. I am tired of it. I'm so tired of it. I don't care if someone's religious. If you're religious, you want to believe in that, that's fine. You wholeheartedly believe in it. That's great. But don't suggest that there's something wrong with someone who doesn't believe what you believe, because trust me, I think there's something wrong. with someone who believes in a magic fairy that controls everything but doesn't control everything, but has a plan but doesn't know that the plan's going to go that way because come on, you know.
Right, and don't believe that what you believe it is the de facto law of the land, that this is the way America has to be, a Christian nation. And with your particular religion at the center of it, who deigns to allow all the other people to exist as long as they don't try to imitate their institutions like marriage and whatnot.
Right. It's nonsense.
Like it exclusively belongs to them.
Right.
Like patriotism is patriotism is exclusively a Christian notion, or vice versa.
Right.
Come on, y'all. Jesus was white and was an American and was a Republican and fuck all them libtards. Because
Jesus was a socialist.
Oh yeah. Jesus was a hippie. He was a homeless hippie.
I used to be religious, and that's what I saw at the core of the practice of religion, and that's why I left the church. That's why I left being religious. That's why I stopped calling myself a Christian, is because of just the way that most people, not all Christians, clearly, I mean, no one description of a person is like a monolith and they all act like this. There are a lot of Christians out there who do not believe in that stuff. But at its very core of the practice, I see the will to establish a dominion, a hegemony, a dominance of our culture is the culture.
Right.
It will one day rule the world.
Right.
And we must always be working to bring people into the fold because we are what's right. We are the truth.
Well, and to put it plainly, in my entire life and always being willing to have that conversation with people, right? There's only one person I've encountered. It's one of my favorite people. I'm not going to call him out on the show, but there's only one person I've encountered who I could have an honest and real conversation back and forth without, we both were like, hey, what you believe is, I think it's wrong. You know what I mean? But we were able to have an honest conversation back and forth that didn't include like threats of anything, like, oh God, yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to threaten. I can tell you this right now. Dying is shut off. Just nothing. Okay. And that scares people. And I think everybody kind of knows that because they were born at one time and they know that for the thousands and millions and billions of years before, they experienced absolutely nothing. But it's hard to put into words and it scares people. That doesn't scare me. It actually is like, whatever. It's not a big deal. I think that that's the main reason for it. That scares the shit out of people. They made a fairy tale for themselves and it helps. Great. That's my feeling. But I also am not going to walk around trying to force it on people or telling homosexual people that they can't get married or telling somebody that they can't change their gender. We get one life. It's yours. You're the same people that will preach this stuff, that will shove it in your face, talk all about freedom all day long. They lose their minds if someone suggests something about freedom or says anything like, oh, something's wrong in America. They're like, oh, you don't like freedom? Oh, you're a communist? I
miss my freedoms.
Oh, freedom. You can have freedom as long as you believe exactly what I believe. Like, seriously.
It's not freedom you're after. It's being on top.
Yeah.
It's having your way be the way.
So, yeah, to avoid, I could talk about this for 6.5 hours and not be done.
I was going to say, is this our new segment? Did Harold finally get in his Don't Get Harold Started?
Don't get Harold started. So this has been Don't Get Harold Started, our newest segment. Don't get Harold started. Once you start him up, he never stops. We got 2 new segments in this episode. Awesome.
I apologize. It's just some
sound bites. It's going to be great.
Right. I apologize. It's just something that has bothered me for so long, and it just seems to be something that this guy says gay rights is a collective delusion. I think that people like him belong to a collective delusion where he thinks that everybody thinks exactly the same way he does. And that's not the case. What makes America great is that we don't all think the same thing. And we can still work together through that. That's what makes us great. And hopefully someday it will spread across the world and we can make the whole earth great. Because if anything has been taught to us by the technology that we've gained, this book is all about the crazy technologies they have. And it's still just used as a means of war and fighting and conquering, right?
Right. But there is a unification of this world, which we'll get into.
But even in the unification, it's still divided in ways. You know, if you don't comply, you know, the non-compliance states and stuff.
And that does come into it. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that if technology has taught us anything, especially in the last 20 or 30 years, it's that the earth is not as big as we thought it was. And we've got a whole universe out there surrounding us, and everybody knows it now. Well, most people know it. Some people think the earth is flat and they're crazy. But most people know that the world is small, realistically. It seems big to us relatively, but it is small. I can talk to somebody on the other side of the world right now. So hopefully someday humanity will come together in a Star Trek way. Star Trek is probably one of my favorites. The whole world works together, and anyhow, for humanity's sake, forgot. Ugh.
Right. We're still working on it.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of shit gets caused when technology advances and people who had no idea of each other's existence are able to interact with each other and see vast differences right away. And that's vast differences, not vast differences.
Vast differences.
Weirdos. Yes. But yeah, many different people coming together. E pluribus unum, of many, one.
Exactly. So I love y'all. We can just all talk about all the regular other things that we have in common and stuff, and not try to cram each other's beliefs down each other's throats. There.
Right.
An Orson Scott Card is a homophobe, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. Probably closeted. But anyways.
Possibly. That isn't always the case, but it is very...
Yeah,
it happens.
In spite of all this, he's given us a pretty damn good book, guys.
Ender's Game is a pretty good book. It's engaging and fun to read, and yeah.
I devoured it.
Yeah, he did.
I know you guys aren't the way through it, but I read it in the span
Harold
of...
and I aren't done with it yet, yeah.
4 days. I couldn't put it down.
Do you still have a job? Are you okay?
I do. I read during my lunch breaks, and
this is our thickest book yet.
It is. You know, the reason it's so thick, though, is there's a lot of filler in this book.
I know, right? All this wood pulp.
Right.
Just pressed into many, many, many thin sheets of filler.
Like, I figured that he was just going to, introduce Ender, and then Ender was going to win.
He wins the game, guys.
Yeah, but there's 200 pages between that. Josh is just shut the fuck up.
I'm I haven't said this since the second episode. What episode are we on? And you guys fucking bring it up every goddamn time.
Josh, we've known each other for 20 years.
It doesn't have a lot of filler. There's a lot of, most of this is pretty much needed.
It
really
thick
isn't.
Because it's got a lot of story.
Yeah. It is a good book. It's a good book, and it doesn't have a lot of filler. There's not wasted words for the most part. But I want to say I've known you for 20 years, and there are things I haven't let go of since we were 19.
And you say I'm stubborn, dick.
It's not stubborn. I just like to pick on you about things that...
It's because you have no one else to pick on. I get it.
I've got other people. I've got 2 kids. I pick on them all the time. And Buddy's smaller than me.
All right, so let's set the scene of this book. It takes place in a moderately distant future, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, they play with the time a little bit, because they don't give you an exact time.
They don't give an exact year, but we know from details in the book that there has been an alien race that has invaded Earth, and we were not ready for them, but we managed to fight them back. And ever since then, humanity has been preparing for another attack from this alien race that they call buggers.
Or at least the way they sell it is that they're preparing for another attack.
Right.
Another attack on Earth.
So to prepare for this imminent attack, they are basically recruiting children to train them from when they're very small children all the way up to when they become adults to be ready for this war, to be commanders for this war.
Mm-hmm. There's something confusing about this world building too, that they're preparing for this attack, but there seems to be a limit on how many children people are allowed to have. Like, wouldn't you think you would be encouraging population growth for cannon fodder?
But clearly they're not looking for cannon fodder necessarily. They're looking for what they learned from the previous attack was that it didn't really matter how many people they threw at the enemy if they weren't able to outthink the enemy. And yeah, I mean, in this case, they're trying to specifically raise these kids to, from like 5-6 years old. They're trying to turn them into soldiers, which is wild because then you would think that their entire life.
Yeah, they're trying to turn them into tactical geniuses or trying to figure out where their next master tactician is going to come from.
Right. And
enter a young man named Andrew Wiggin.
And it's cool how they start each chapter. Each chapter starts with, in the first one, they don't really tell you who it is that's speaking back and forth, but these two guys are talking back and forth, and they have these monitors in the kids up until a certain age. They leave this monitor in their necks. They can see through their eyes. They can hear through their ears. They can tell what kind of emotions they're feeling. They can tell if they experience pain. But yeah, it starts with, I've watched through his eyes, I've listened through his ears, and I tell you, he's the one, or at least he's as close as we're going to get. And his older brother was also very promising, but he had reasons that he couldn't go. He had personality problems that made it impossible for him to be a valid commander. His sister was also supposedly promising, but it kind of worked out that Ender, who is he's the third child in the family, which is what we're getting at. People are only allowed to have 2 kids, or at least so they can have more than 2 kids. But if they have a 3rd or 4th kid, in most cases, not this case, because the government wanted them to have a 3rd kid. But in most cases, any kid past the first 2 cannot go to public school, does not get health care, it seems like. The food rations are probably lower, like they don't give them to the kid. So the world economy will not support it.
Yeah, and on top of that, they become like social outcasts.
Yep. Yeah, the whole family does.
Because 3rd is like a slur. Yep. They call Andrew, who goes by Ender, because that's the name that his sister called him when she was young, or they were both young. But he goes by Ender, the titular character. But the other kids make fun of him, calling him a 3rd, because he's the 3rd kid in his family.
I relate to that. I'm a 3rd as well.
Ooh, you dirty 3rd. I didn't know that. Yeah,
at one point, they call him a turd, and I've heard that as well. Yep, I've been called Harold the Turd.
It's so far that this book has the most raw language we've encountered in young adult fiction.
Oh, for sure.
Everything else has been really innocent, and they're not out and out swearing and shit, but they're talking about turds and farts, and there's violence, and there's all the good stuff. Not really any sex. I mean, they're kids.
Yeah, they're kids.
It doesn't go that raw. Come on.
Everybody knows that violence is totally okay for kids.
Totally. Especially these kids. Holy shit.
So the book starts on the day that Ender is getting his monitor removed. And it's kind of like, as far as anyone knows or seems to know, when a monitor gets taken out, it means that you've washed out and that the military does not want you now. So they tell him it's not going to hurt. And he says right off the get, this is how you start seeing right away that Ender's really smart. and he has a tactical mind, and so he knows how to see past what someone's saying. So they say it's not going to hurt, and he's like, yeah, them saying that means it definitely is going to hurt, but at least I know what to expect now. And then he says, sometimes lies are more dependable than the truth. And when they take it out, it isn't a nice experience for him.
It does not go according to plan.
No, his whole body kind of stiffens up. He says he feels a pang from his neck down to his tailbone or his groin. And he can't talk right at first. They have to give him a shot. And then the doctor and the nurse are going back and forth about how they could have shut him off forever. They could have killed him, basically, or at least shut his brain down.
He came close to, making him brain dead.
Yep. And he's kind of excited about this because his older brother Peter is kind of a psycho. And he's thinking at first, like, hey, now that I don't have a monitor, now Peter won't hate me and it'll be good now. But at the same time, he also kept his monitor a year longer than Peter did. Peter had his removed when he was 5, and Ender is 6. So Peter kind of hates him for the fact that he's doing better than he did.
I feel like Peter's going to find any reason he can to make Ender's life more difficult.
Yeah, he's a straight-up dick.
Bit of a psycho.
Yeah, he's not a good older brother.
Right, and it's even like he says at one point, he goes, no, we're not friends, not enemies, we're brothers. We can live in the same house and yada yada. He says all this, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, like, I didn't, like, try to kill my brother. We got in fights and we wrestled, but this guy straight up, like, threatens to murder Ender and his sister.
Yeah.
And he goes on a long, detailed explanation of how he plans to murder them at some point.
This psychopath just keeps fantasizing about killing them.
Yep.
Whereas Ender, he just kind of daydreams about other things, because he goes back to class after he gets the monitor taken out, but he doesn't really pay attention in class because he already knows what the teacher's teaching. He's a very smart kid. So they're going on and on about arithmetic and things like that, and he's drawing these amazing maps on his these cool desk displays that they have and turning them into 3D models. And
if I had a desk like this and I could draw 3D models, I'd draw some boobs.
That's what we did with the calculator. We could write boobs with the calculator, so that's what we did.
Because I'm 12.
58008. Turn it upside down.
Yep.
Boobs.
Didn't it say somewhere that like Ender's sister Valentine taught him arithmetic when he was 3?
When he was 3.
Arithmetic.
Yeah, basically everything he needs to know about
when he was
math.
3.
Just learn at age 3. These kids are like stupid smart, man.
Hey, not just stupid smart, but physically able as well. I mean, I don't know what's going on in this future. They must be forced to eat Wheaties or something, because they're extremely intelligent, and they seem to be extremely physically able as well, beyond anything, I mean,
they're essentially adults.
Right.
Like fully developed mental capacity.
I mean, I can tell you right now that if Ender was coming at me, I could definitely knock him out. Because he's only 6.
You have mentioned several times how you'd be able to beat up a child.
You could only do it once. After that, he will know all your moves.
Oh, he would. Then you're right.
He's basically Taskmaster meets Charles Wallace.
Wait, is Charles Wallace? Are we talking about Charles Wallace or what has Charles Wallace?
No, we're definitely talking about Charles Wallace.
Okay.
There is no it.
Is
Charles
it
Wallace?
Charles
Wallace.
But
it is Charles Wallace?
All right,
okay.
we're talking about Charles Wallace controlling Charles Wallace, speaking as Charles Wallace, hosting 60 Minutes, Charles Wallace. I don't know if that's the name of a 60 Minutes host, but
that's Barbara Walters.
There's more than there's several hosts of 60 Minutes.
Nope, Barbara Walters. She's the only one that does it. She's an immortal.
Anyways, we're talking about Charles Wallace himself.
I thought we were talking about Ender.
Yeah, I thought this was about Ender.
Charles Wallace Ender, yes.
Did Ender get taken over by it?
Is Ender in control of himself?
I don't know. Is Ender?
We'll find out.
And Ender's
as
Ender.
we get farther into the story.
Anyways, two peas in the pod. They're like two peas in a pod.
Okay.
They seem to be of the same kind of wavelength, similar wavelengths.
These desks are really cool. Like, these desks seem like they're a mix between a computer, tablet, 3D holograph model maker. I think they're really cool because they talk about how they put them in their lap, so they're not exactly sitting at a desk.
Right.
But yeah,
I keep imagining like an oversized tablet.
Yeah, that's what I keep seeing too. That can do holographic imaging. Like right here, he says everyone signed off their desks. Or hurriedly typed in reminders to themselves. Some were dumping lessons or data into their computers at home. But yeah, like, and he talks about having a child-sized keyboard and wonders what it would feel like to have hands as large as grown-ups and how awkward it must feel, even though they have bigger keyboards. And we didn't have child-sized keyboards when I was in school, but I mean, it was 1984, and Orson Scott Card is a homophobe, so I could see how he might think that kids would need smaller keyboards.
But class is over, so the teacher reminds him that he needs to go, or you'll miss the bus. So he got up.
He's got this kid, Stilson, that's been pestering him in class and making fun of him for getting his monitor out.
For being a third. This is when you do see their age. Hey, third. Hey, turd. Called him a turd.
Bugger lover.
Yep. What else? Turd face. Like that one. It's a good one. A lot of turd references for these people.
Yep. And Ender kind of like, he knows that this kid's gonna fuck with him, and this kid has a gang of kids with him basically, and Ender's kind of playing it cool, like, hey, you just gonna let me through? Come on. And they're all like, oh, we'll let your arm through, then we'll let your butt through, maybe a piece of your knee. And they're all kind of laughing and teasing him. And
now they have the ability to attack him because his monitor is out. Before they couldn't touch him because they could tell if somebody was messing with them. So now they can finally, put some hurt into him.
And we kind of see Ender's ability to learn really quickly what a person is going to do and figure out how to outsmart them on the next move. And so Stilson like pushes him with one of his hands, and Ender decides that he's not going to take this. And so he plans that the next time Stilson goes to push him, he's going to grab him. So Ender grabs him, and he ends up losing his hand, or Stilson's hand. He lets go of Stilson's hand, losing his hand.
Nobody loses a hand.
Yeah, nobody loses a hand, but he loses the grip on the hand. And then he like front kicks Stilson right in the chest and drops him on the ground. And at this point, he makes a decision as he sees the other kids are all standing around. He's like, I have to win this fight and all the fights that will come after. And so he goes and he just starts like slowly walking around, and he kicks Stilson in the stomach, kicks him in the groin, and then he kicks him in the face to make sure that he's done for, and that all the other kids are like, oh shit,
Yeah, because they were ganging up on him. And so Ender tried to stop the fight before it even started. He said he laughed. You mean it takes this many of you to fight 1/3? And then they, we're people, not thirds, turd face. You're about as strong as a fart. And that's when he kicked high and hard, catching Stilson square in the breastbone. He dropped. Yeah, dude, if you kick somebody right square in the chest, oh yeah, that's gonna, if nothing else, that'll take the wind out of you.
And I can definitely say that, at least with kids, I don't necessarily think it happens this way with adults, but with kids for sure. If a bunch of kids are picking on you, not me as an adult, I don't actually fight kids, but when I was a kid, if a bunch of kids are picking on you, if you hit one of them hard enough that they get really hurt, the other ones all of a sudden don't want to fight anymore. It's funny. So this definitely works, Ender's little game here that he plays.
I see what you did there.
Oh, did it?
This is like a fucking prison mentality. Like, I have to take out the big one and let him know that I'm not going to be messed around with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know that works in prison for real. I mean, people say that, but I doubt that actually works in prison. But in this aspect, like with kids, it definitely probably works because kids don't realize about getting hurt until they see someone get hurt and they're like, holy shit.
Yeah, this sets up the situation. They were all wondering if he was dead. Ender, however, was trying to figure out a way to forestall vengeance to keep them from taking him in a pack tomorrow. I have to win this now and for all time, or I'll fight it every day, and it will get worse and worse. So yeah, he was finding a solution to the problem that he saw, the future problem. Right. And this was the immediate solution, was to, you find the biggest guy and you beat the fuck out of him.
Win all the fights that are to come. You win them right now so you don't have to fight them later. That was his goal. But even afterwards, he went down a corridor waiting for the bus and he cried because it wasn't something he wanted to do. Overall, Ender's a sweet kid, a nice kid, and people were these bullies were picking on him, and he just wanted to go through. And the reality is had he just let them, they probably would have hurt him just as bad or worse.
And they would have kept coming back and doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
So this was the way to minimize that happening, minimize his pain, minimize any future occurrences of this happening. Kind of a preemptive strike.
Yep.
Shock and awe.
And then he gives the warning. You might be having some idea of ganging up on me. You could probably beat me up pretty bad. But just remember what I do to people who try to hurt me. From then on, you'd be wondering when I'd get you and how bad it would be. He kicks Stilson in the face. Yeah, he's still fucking this kid up.
Finish him.
Then he says, it wouldn't be this bad. It would be worse. Yeah, dude.
Right.
Ender, don't fuck around.
Now, mind you, again, this is a 6-year-old. So, I mean, that's what I kept having to, play in my head. Man, this is just a little 6.
You very early have to let go of the fact that these are 6-year-olds.
Right, because Bruce is 7, and Ender is small for a 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm. And my son Xander is 7. Yeah. I cannot fathom either of those kids doing this shit.
No, not at all. So, I mean, that's crazy. And they explain that Ender's small for his age. And, Bruce isn't the biggest kid. He's just below average, I would say, in size. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine him being anything like this, But
then again, Bruce is a very sweet boy. So
Bruce is too sweet.
Yeah. He's just nice. So
sweet and naive.
But tactically speaking,
No, not very tactical.
Not very tactical at all.
Safe-minded, though. Safe-minded.
He when he wants something and he doesn't want me to know, he can surprise me sometimes. I will say that he's surprised me a few times. But, so I like how they start each chapter with these conversations between the military heads.
I believe this probably inspired the very beginning of the first Mass Effect game, where it's a conversation between two high ups in the military brass. Hey, is this the guy? Is this the one we want? Are you sure that we can trust him with the fate of humanity? He's our best shot of what we got. And that kind of stuff. That's what it reminds me of.
I think that I've actually seen that happen in other games and media and movies as well, too. I mean, kind of like with Wrinkle in Time, a lot of stuff from Ender's Game. I mean, the way they describe the ships and everything, you could open up 10 different sci-fi movies about space travel and spaceships and find similarities with some of this stuff. So, I mean, I imagine between, Stanley Kubrick with 2001 and stuff like this, they probably inspired a lot of people.
I mean, this is a movie also. They made it.
Right, there's a movie as well. Have you ever seen Soldier with Kurt Russell?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so it kind of reminds me of that, too.
That movie's awesome because of how much he got paid per word. It's insane.
Yeah, wasn't it he only said 75 words in the whole movie?
It was something crazy like that.
I believe it was 75 words.
Where you talk about it.
Well, you don't hire action stars to say words.
Yeah, but we're talking about Kurt Russell. He's not wholly an action hero star.
Come on, he was in Tango and Cash.
Right, that is true. In the second chapter, when they start out talking about him, though, they're still monitoring him. Clearly, they have probably CCTV and all kinds of future techno gadgets to be able to watch these kids. But they're following him, and they see him beat this kid up. And they don't know that he continued the fight just to win all the other fights yet. But they know that, he beat the living crap out of that kid. And they compare him to someone named Mazer Rackham. And
that's an awesome
they talk
name.
about him later. Yeah, he is.
Mazer.
But they are interested to see what he's going to do when he gets home and runs into his brother. Because, again, they monitored his brother for a time and they got rid of him because he's a psycho. Because they knew that he wouldn't be someone that they could trust to do the right thing at the end of the day. He would just become a crazed maniac. Especially if given enough power.
Oh, update. Kurt Russell says 104 words in Soldier.
104 words. Yeah.
In the movie Soldier.
It's a fun movie.
It's ridiculous.
We meet Valentine first when he gets home. And Valentine is his sister. And Valentine and Ender they're really close with each other. They love each other very much. She even apologizes to him. Like, I'm sorry, Ender, when he comes home and she sees the Band-Aid on his neck. And Ender says, he's glad it's gone. And he has a strange relationship with this whole thing. He doesn't want it, but he does want it. He doesn't want to become a military mind, but he does want it. He's torn. And I would think you might be if you were 6 years old and being given these lifelong adult decisions to make.
Well, not only that, I feel like the monitor was protection for him.
Right. Someone's watching if Peter does anything to him.
And now that the protection's gone, he doesn't know what he's going to do. But we already know what he's going to do. He's going to fuck people up.
They describe Peter as having dark, thick, tousled hair and a face that could have belonged to Alexander the Great. So his brother is cool and handsome and strong. And a bunch of things that Ender really isn't, but he is missing the important things that Ender has. He's smart as well, but he has no empathy is the way I see it as compared to Ender. That's one of the things they like about him is he's empathetic. He cares about other people, which means he cares about the human race.
So Peter discovers that Ender doesn't have his monitor anymore.
And instead of being happy for him or thinking that, hey, now we're the same, man, I relate to you. No, he's a total super dick about it.
He's jealous that he got to keep the monitor until he was 6 when they took it from him took it from Peter when he was 5. Got kind of upset that Ender almost made it to the stage of being taken.
He immediately suggests that they play buggers versus astronauts, which is the buggers are the alien race that came and attacked Earth.
It's the future version of Cowboys versus Indians.
Right. And he says Ender has to be the bugger, and Ender puts on a mask, which he can barely see out of. So it's like the game is rigged against the bugger right away.
And not only that, Ender says that here the buggers couldn't give up like they did in the real war. Here he had to just keep playing until Peter got sick of it, basically.
Right.
And also he has the perspective to realize that he's at a disadvantage because buggers don't wear masks when they fight. They can see, and wearing that mask, Ender can't really see to defend himself. So he's in a very disadvantageous situation here. I would get a foot, but he says to him, "Don't see too well, do you, bugger?" said Peter. Ender began to take off the mask. Peter put his toe against Ender's groin. His toe? "Don't take off the mask," Peter said. Ender pulled the mask down into place, took his hands away. So then Peter presses his foot down, and then he ends up putting his knee right, I would say, at the sternum is what it seemed like to me, and started pushing really hard down on it, and almost like it was on the breastbone, yeah. And he was telling him then, that's when Peter says, he's like, "I could kill you like this, just press and press until you're dead, and I could say I didn't know it would hurt you, that we were just playing, and they'd believe me, and everything would be fine, and you'd be dead, everything would be fine." So yeah, and this goes on to his
part where he basically continues to say he could kill Ender, and then he tells his sister, "Oh, I could kill you too," and say it was an accident. And she's like, "Oh yeah, people will believe that, like both of us got killed by accident." And the only way she's able to kind of like stop him off is by saying, "I know that you want to be a politician someday, and if this happened, you wouldn't be able to do that."
Valentine knows how to handle Peter. She knows that he probably. Like, I don't know just how far Peter is willing to go, but she knows that it's better to convince him that it's not to his advantage to do anything.
Right.
That it would be an inconvenience to him, or it would negatively affect him to go through with it. That he wouldn't just get away with it.
Peter is kind of represents Ender's ruthless side, and Valentine represents his tactical thinking of all the possibilities side.
Didn't see it like that before.
Yeah, that's good insight. Nice.
Yeah.
That's why people come to the podcast.
To hear Harold's profound realizations.
Or just his soothing sounds. Oh, yeah.
And then they'll listen to Andy and Josh have their minds fucking blown. Holy shit.
Damn.
So he ends up going through it's a whole page of him explaining how he's going to kill them someday and it'll look like an accident and he'll cry and everybody will believe him. I mean, he goes on and on for a while.
Valentine can't protect him forever.
Yeah, even on the second page, the next page over, "I'm going to kill you and chop you into little pieces and put you in the garbage hole." Like, geez, dude, relax.
They sum it up very nicely. Peter was a murderer at heart, and nobody knew it but Valentine and Ender. That sums it up.
Yeah, Ender shows him the blood on his shoe and is like, "Yeah, don't be thinking that you're just going to be able to take me out with no worries, But Peter kind of blows it off.
He shows the blood that he got from kicking Stilson in the face. Says, "See that blood? That's not my blood. I beat somebody up earlier." But Peter says, "Oh, that's probably Ender squashed a caterpillar, and now he's gonna squish me."
But later on, after they've gone to bed, Peter is like tossing and turning in bed, and Ender can hear him, and he gets up. Peter gets up and goes to the bathroom. And then when he comes back, Ender's laying there and he's like, "Oh man, he's going to smother me with a pillow or something like that." And Peter actually says, "Ender, I'm sorry. I know how it feels. I'm sorry. I'm your brother. I love you." So after everything, he did have some sympathy for Ender getting his monitor taken away. For a moment there, he actually had some humanity.
Either that, or he's just fucking with Ender, or just completely unstable. Completely, not manic
depressive, or
maybe
bipolar.
Bipolar, that's the word I'm looking for. Yep. Yeah.
So in the next with the next chapter, we get introduced to a guy named Graf, and he's one of the two people who are having the conversations at the beginning of each chapter. And Graf is basically the person who really believes that Ender is someone important, that Ender is going to be a great military leader.
He's Morpheus. He's Morpheus in the story.
Yeah, and he's talking about how it's going to be really hard to get Ender away from his sister because they care about each other, and to leave to go to get the training he's going to need, he's going to be gone for his entire childhood, and he's not going to be able to come back and visit and see his family. So it's basically like, to be taken away to do this is almost as if you've just cut that person out of your life now.
So they discuss how they're going to be able to do this to this kid. How are they going to get him to come with them?
Yep.
So they discuss, how will you do that? I'll lie to him. And if that doesn't work, then I'll tell the truth. We're allowed to do that in emergencies. Can't plan for everything, So the government runs on lies? Weird. Strange how that seems.
Seems like this government is the type of government that would not allow people to live their lives the way they wish to.
Yeah, making them only have 2 children.
Yep.
Which is weird because he's a Mormon.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's intentional. I think that Orson Scott Card is trying to say, like, this government, this version of a government is a bad
The oppressive government would limit a Mormon to 2 children.
Yeah, it's an oppressive government. I mean, even like he talks about in this chapter how, his family used to be religious, but they had to give up their religion to be compliant, you know?
Yeah, that is the kind of mindset that these family values type folks might have.
Right. It again, would have. Within this story, the poor religious people are the ones who are persecuted against. So he had that fight, and as they're sitting there eating breakfast all around the table, someone comes up to the door. The table beeps, and they're able to see him in the video on the table, which is cool. And this guy was wearing the only military outfit that matters, and it's the IF, or the International Fleet. And everybody is kind of like, what the fuck? Because Ender lost his monitor. They assume that it's all done.
And they thought that meant that he wouldn't want him anymore.
Yep. So his dad goes to the door, and Peter's like, haha, you're going to get in trouble for beating that kid up. You're going to go to the belt, which is like prison, I'm guessing.
His exact words were, you're in deep poo.
You're a third turd. You've got no rights. So
could be an anal exam.
Right. Like, well, the sister comes downstairs and says, where's mom and dad? I'm too sick to go to school. And Peter says, oh, another oral exam, huh? She says, shut up. And he goes, you should relax and enjoy it. It could be worse. I don't know how. It could be an anal exam. You're like, what the fuck? So they're all talking.
You're fucked up.
Yeah, you're fucked up, Peter. So they're out talking to the International Fleet guy, and then they ask Ender to come out there, and they basically, this guy had let them know that the Stilson boy was in the hospital, and they explain, it wasn't really fair what you did to him, and
with your shoe, Ender. Come on.
I mean, it was more like his leg and his foot. The shoe was just extra, but
I had to beat them to death with their own shoes.
But they're all kind of thrown off, like, why is there an International Fleet guy here about this? Maybe someone from the school. And so the officer asks if he has an explanation for it. And Ender, like, is kind of like, oh, man, I'm terrible. This is the worst. And the officer says that he's willing to consider extenuating circumstances, but he needs to know why, because he kicked him while he was down repeatedly. And Ender says he didn't enjoy it. And he says, why did you do it? And Ender says he had his gang. And the officer's like, oh, this excuses it? And Ender says no. And he asked him to tell him why. And he said, knocking him down won the first fight. I wanted to win all the next ones too, so they'd leave me alone. And that was basically the answer that they wanted. Because in the battle that they are looking to fight with these buggers is we don't want to just win one battle against them. We want to make sure they know never to fucking come to Earth again.
They also probably wanted to know that it wasn't any kind of sadism behind his actions.
Yeah, they wanted to make sure he wasn't a sadist too.
A sadist.
Yeah.
That's a reference to a Wrinkle in Time episode, which you should listen to. Sometimes we deliver in-jokes that only make sense if you've listened to all of our episodes. So go up and do that, please. Yeah, they're called callbacks.
We do them a lot.
They're funnier if you're familiar with the reference.
If you have listened to the Wrinkle in Time episodes and you still miss that joke, go back and listen to it again.
Because you zoned out.
Yeah.
And now you don't understand why sadist is funny. Anyways.
So basically, Ender explains that, since his monitor got taken away, he knew he had to take care of himself. And his dad's like, you should have got a grown up. And the officer comes and puts his hand out, tells him his name is Graff. He's Colonel Hiram Graff, and he's the director of the battle school.
And I am a grown up.
I am a grown up. I believe that Graff is the guy played by Harrison Ford in the movie. Yes. I've only seen the movie once, so I'm definitely excited to watch it before we do our reiterated episode.
Yeah, I am too. I do want to watch that again. It's been years.
I believe that Graph is a chain of car dealerships that I used to do advertising for, and every time I see the name Graph in this book, I keep thinking of Hank Graff from Graff Chevrolet.
I will say that Graph Chevrolet is where I purchased the Sonic and the tracks. So Renee Dean over at Graph Chevrolet, she's great. I've bought multiple cars from her.
I actually bought one from her too.
Yep, I've known
my Homemobile. I bought my Homemobile from Renee. I'm sure she had nothing to do with someone scratching hoe into it, but yep, she's the one who sold me that Impala.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
I've known Renee since I was 18. I worked with her at Dunlop Pontiac, too.
So this has been our advertisement for Renee Dean at Graph Chevrolet. Ding.
Yep. Go check her out.
Wilder Road in Bay City. Chevrolet, find new roads.
When I was looking at these two cars, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be able to get them because they couldn't find. I wanted a red Rally Sport Sonic. And I wasn't sure they'd find it. And when I was saying that to my wife, a guy that overheard us said, "Oh, if Renee wants to get you a car that you want, you're gonna get it." And so there's yeah, I've always liked her. Go check her out. Anyways, so
yeah. No guarantees during this shortage that we're experiencing due to the pandemic. But
you'd be surprised.
Maybe maybe Graph Chevrolet will surprise you.
Watch, she doesn't even work at Graph anymore.
I mean, I don't even work for Graph anymore.
Right. So yeah, they
Colonel
offer
Graph.
him. Yeah, they offer him a position in the battle school, which none of them expected because of the removal of the monitor.
He explains that the final step in Ender's testing was to see what would happen when the monitor came off. His mom gets incredulous, saying, "That's how he passed? You putting the Stilson boy in a hospital? What would you do if he had killed him? Given him a medal?" But Graph explains to him that it's not what he did, it's why.
And they basically tell them, like, right off the bat, like, this isn't even a question for you. You guys don't get to decide anything about this because we have your consent from the moment of his conception. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to have him in the first place. He even says he has been ours from then if he qualified.
That's what you get for having too much sex.
Yep.
You idiots. Because we're the government and you have no freedoms. Nyeh, nyeh, nyeh. Oh man, Orson Scott Card's big bugaboo about Game of Thrones was that it had too much sex in it. And it's rumored that the Game of Thrones got back at his review by there's a scene where Jaime Lannister and Tyrion were telling a story about their stupid cousin Orson. And many people think that that's their revenge against Orson Scott Card's unfavorable review.
I think that the extreme taboo that people make about sex is what makes so many deviant sex things happen. Because people...
It's like, fuck you, you're not going to tell me what to do and how to do it. I'm just going to go to the extremes. How about that?
I think everybody's so worried that they're weird about any kind of sexual proclivity. You know, I mean, there's certain ones that are for sure no good, right? Specifically children. No, that's not okay, right? But
or anything without consent.
Or anything without consent, correct. But there are so many different ways that people experience sex, you know, in consenting relationships and all that. And I think that a lot of the taboo that we're like, ooh, I don't have sex, you have sex? Oh, no, none of us have sex. Ooh, no way. I think that causes more problems than it helps. It's a weird thing in America, I think is funny. You know, you can't drive down the road without seeing titties on a billboard trying to sell you something, right? But then at the same time, they're like, well, what about our traditional values? But, you know, like, I don't know.
Honestly, I don't think I see enough titties driving down the road.
You don't see them so much anymore on billboards, but I mean, it's in commercials, it's in everything. Everything, it's just all over the place. They got so much, everything's sex, but then they're like, yeah, we don't like sex.
You want to see boobs? Get on TikTok. Lots of boobs on there.
It's weird how much hypocrisy comes from people that are trying to hold a moral high ground. I was talking about that whole describing a victimless crime. I was telling you about that the other day, Andy. And an example of a victimless crime would be prostitution, right? And now we're not talking about if somebody was human trafficked or kidnapped or is being forced to do it. I'm talking about if a woman decides or a man decides that they want to charge someone to have sex with them, right? If they're consenting and the only reason they're doing it is because that's how they want to make money, it's considered a victimless crime, right? The only thing that makes it criminal is someone standing on a moral high ground saying that it is so. Because clearly in other countries and in Vegas,
not Vegas,
they have
outside Vegas,
they have found a way to make it legal. And in those cases, you know, there are rules to it. You might have to have a STD test prior to going there. They get tested. You probably, no doubt, have to wear a contraceptive. They're within a place where they're safe. I mean, the only reason it's criminal is because somebody decided to hold a moral high ground and say it's a crime.
Yeah, I can literally drive 2 hours with money and have sex if I wanted to. That's how close Reno is. It's like 2 hours away.
I can go I think 9 or 10 blocks, but you know,
I don't know
quality.
Chico. I don't think Chico has a lot of sex workers, unfortunately. But I know for a fact that I could drive to Reno and have sex if I really wanted to. But I digress. And you digress. That's two instances of Harold.
We all digress.
I don't know how we got
too
here.
many episodes. We've already had 2 segments of Harold started, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well,
we got here because our parents had sex.
Yep.
Just like Ender's parents had sex 3 times.
I got started earlier in the episode, and the problem is it's kind of like, you know, once I'm started, that's why you don't get me started.
Yeah, we've kind of circled back around on this morality tale.
But I mean, it's a topic within this book. This guy goes on in his own little backhanded ways of pushing ideas,
right? Which I didn't see until we started talking about this. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't see this as sort of a dystopian future for Mormons until we put it into that context, because I didn't look into the whole Orson Scott Card's self-righteousness with his morality or whatnot.
Yep.
So now this is starting to put this kind of shit into context,
right? Now, they do explain, or Graf explains, that Ender's not going to just be cannon fodder. He's not going to go be a frontline soldier that runs into the bullets. He is going to become an officer if he passes the school. One of the people deciding what happens to the cannon fodder. And he basically says that anybody who passes the battle school gets into command of something, whether that's, you know, a huge distinguished ship that will fight in a major battle, or a domestic defense ship that just surrounds Earth to defend it. And there's honor in all of them, whether it be, you know, I guess it'd kind of be like the Army Reserve versus the Army or National Guard or something. He's saying there's honor in both of them. It's not like if he doesn't go on to be the best commander in the world, he's going to be a piece of shit, which is right. A true statement.
This is apparently a pretty prestigious school.
Yeah.
Where none of our boys who makes it through the first year has ever failed to receive a commission as an officer. So if you make it, you have made it.
So then he asks to have a private conversation with Ender, and his dad's like, no. And he's like, well, you know, I'm not going to take him without you talking to him again. You're going to be able to say goodbye to him and all that. So they leave, and this is at this point, this is where Ender goes on like kind of a manipulation run. And I think this was the lie part, where he basically is saying, he tells him he won't be back till he's 12 or 16, depending. He might not even be able to come back at 12. And he tells him that, you know, his sister will be a woman by that time, and his family be older, and he basically says, like, you know, well, you know, you'll miss your parents at first, but you won't miss them for long, and you know it, and they aren't going to miss you either, because realistically, you being here is kind of a problem for them. It outcasts them because you're a third. You know, they love you, but you cost them a lot. Oh, and that's why we got to where we were, because
here we get their backstory.
Yep, he goes into the fact that they were religious, but they gave up their religion to be compliant families, to be a compliant family. And then they were allowed to have a third child. Unbeknownst to them, apparently they make good stock or something. And they tried Peter. The IF tried Peter. Peter was a psycho. They tried Valentine. She was way too empathetic. And then they got Ender, and they're hoping that he is going to be a mix of the two. Oh, and even here, this is where... you know, finding out that he was a Mormon, or he's a Mormon, Orson Scott Card, really makes it sense when he lays on thick that your mother won't even admit that she was born in Utah because she's so repressed.
They're ashamed of having come from non-compliant families. They conceal it.
Your dad was a Catholic, and he baptized you, but you didn't know it because you were babies.
Your mom didn't want you to be baptized Catholic.
She wanted you to be Mormons and have lots of wives.
Yeah. It's like that self-martyrdom that Christians put themselves through, saying they're so persecuted.
What I'm literally talking about.
Because the non-Christians want to say, hey, we're valid people too.
Hey, man, that's nice that you have that. But, you know, I mean, I just don't think that we should have religion in public schools because my kids go there, too.
Yeah. I have a freedom from religion, you understand? I have a right to to live without religion if I want to. Oh, how could you say that? We're so persecuted. Oh, God, take me now.
Yep. That's the one I don't get about the schools and everything. It's like, well, my kids go to the public school that I pay taxes for too, so I really don't think we should be teaching religion there. And they're not teaching them not to be religious, see? Because on the weekend or whenever you want, you can take your child to church where they can learn about it. But at school, they just learn facts. No one ever says at school, never once in all the time I went to school, has anyone said to me, by the way, according to school fact, there is no God. No, it never said once. Never said once. So, anyhow. What? They can't teach it at school? Oh. No, you can choose to go to church. So, anyhow.
We're still feeling these fucking effects from the goddamn Cold War.
37 years, bro. 37 years I've been putting up with that.
Yeah, all this in God we trust and...
that wasn't added to the 50s.
Religification. Yeah. Because we were at Cold War with Russia and they were godless communists. So we're gonna go the other way and become godful capitalists.
Yep.
And these people are still hanging on to that stranglehold.
Well, it was beat into their heads, okay? And then they beat it into their kids' heads. And then it wasn't until... And no, even in our age group, there are still
They're still trying to beat it into our heads, With each further generation, we're getting a little further from that.
Right.
Thank God.
Yes. But, man,
Which I recognize as an ironic thing to say.
Right. It's a turn of phrase.
Yeah. Yes.
So, basically they say, you know, your brother wasn't going to work and these instruments allowed us to know things that you wouldn't believe. You know, we heard everything you heard and we understood things that you didn't understand. So basically he's manipulating him to believe that, you know, your family doesn't actually love you. They want you to go. They'll pretend like they don't want you to go. But in the end, Ender does decide that he will go. Oh, and even here, he says he's talking about all the boys there, the boys, and he says Ender says all boys, and he goes, a few girls. They don't often pass the tests to get in. Too many centuries of evolution are working against them. None of them will be like Valentine anyway, but there'll be brothers there, Ender. And it's funny. I don't know what he's trying to get at by bringing up evolution. Like, is he trying to suggest, like, look at that, evolution suggests that women are incapable of anything.
They are handicapped by the natural fact that men are better than women.
Yep. It's just the way it is.
It's science.
It's funny to me because he's almost like trying to throw shade at evolution. Like, see, your evolution doesn't hold up if it makes women weaker. But aren't they also in the belief that women are lesser? Like, so... that first off, the statement that too many centuries of evolution works against women being able to do things isn't true. Okay.
I hear their periods attract bears.
Space bears.
Sleuths of space bears.
Sleuths of space bears.
You hear that? Space bears. Now you're putting the entire Earth at risk.
So... But yeah, they confirm here that the reason Peter wasn't accepted was for the same reasons that Ender hates him. And Ender's like, I don't hate him. He's afraid of him, but doesn't hate him necessarily. And they found Valentine to be too mild. And with Ender, he's the perfect mix. So they tell him there's worse things than being a third, worse things than a big brother that can't make up his mind whether to be human or a jackal. And he says that battle school is one of those worst things. So at least he's being upfront. They're giving him the option to volunteer. They don't want to force him. They need him to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they manipulate him into believing that he's the one that made the choice.
But they also let him know right off the get here that it's fucking terrible. It's not going to be fun. And they go a little bit more into Mazer Rackham here and talk about how he was the one who was able to pull together a crew or a bunch of ships, a fleet of ships, and actually drive the buggers back. But it was not the strength of what he had. It was his tactics and his mind for war that made him great, because he really didn't have much. He had a bunch of rickety ships. Humanity was at the early stages of space fighting, I guess. The Space Force had just been created.
Space Force. I wonder where that's at.
It's still a real branch of the military, I believe.
I wonder if starfighters are in development.
I mean, the Air Force has been working on stuff like that for years. So they kind of already, yes,
for combat.
Specifically.
I guess the Navy gave up on their railgun this week.
Really?
It hadn't really worked very well yet.
Well, that's why they gave up on it.
Right?
If at first you don't succeed, cut your losses and give up.
So you can, okay, so joining the Space Force, you have to go to airforce.com first, okay? There is a spaceforce.mil, okay? But if you look up the United States Space Force, the Wikipedia page has images from the television show Space Force. It's got Steve Carell and stuff. Oh,
excellent.
I mean, do people join it?
I mean, you would need to go to the United States Space Force wiki.
It looks like, yeah, that's right. They used the Star Trek symbol pretty much.
They used a symbol very similar to the Federation logo.
Coronavirus disease 2019 information. Like, they don't even have 2021 military careers in Space Force. Connect and apply now. The sky is not the limit. Your purpose on this planet. Wow, they are really serious, aren't they? It's weird, though, because it says all kinds of stuff about space, but it looks like a bunch of people doing stuff on Earth. What is the mission of the Space Force? I'm sorry that we're off on this tangent, but I want to see the mission of. Okay. So the Space Force. Here's what it says: the mission of the United States Air Force is to fly, fight, and win air power anytime, anywhere, whether full-time, part-time, in or out of uniform. Everyone who serves plays a critical role in helping us achieve the mission success. It doesn't say the Space Force. In fact, it continues to go on and on about the Air Force. So I don't know that the Space Force is anything but an extra thing added on to the Air Force. In fact, it sure seems like that's what it is.
I mean, that's kind of how the Air Force started. They were just a part, I believe they were part of the Navy.
Army.
That's why the Navy still has like jet fighters and things like that.
I think that the Air Force started with the Army.
I'm not sure.
Because the Marines came from the Navy.
Gaining its independence from the United States Army in 1947, the United States Air Force began development of military space and ballistic missile programs.
Nice.
Yep.
Then in 1954, the Air Force created its first space organization, the Western Development Division, under the leadership of General Bernard Shriver. So the Air Force has been doing space stuff since 1954.
That's what I'm saying. The Air Force has been doing space stuff for a long time, and I think it's funny that it doesn't look like the Space Force is actually its own thing. It's just a branch of the Air Force.
Maybe until recently they
It's almost like they simply had to convince people that wouldn't look at it too hard that it was real and not just another branch of the Air Force. Space Force aside.
Yep, we're back with the IF and Colonel Graff.
And he's convincing Ender to come with him.
And he essentially has. He does convince him that they need to go. And Ender agrees. And at first he's kind of like, he says, I'm afraid, but I'll go with you. Graff says, tell me again. And he says, it's what I was born for. If I don't go, why am I alive? And Graff's like, nope, that's not the answer I want. And he says, I don't want to go, but I will. And that's the one that Graff wanted. And he tells him he can change his mind up until the time when he gets in the car with him. But after that, belongs to the international fleet. So they tell his family. Peter shakes his hand, calls him a pinheaded fart eater, and Valentine kisses him and leaves a tear on his cheek.
A lucky little pinheaded fart eater.
Yep, a lucky one. And he doesn't have to take anything with him because they provide everything he's going to need.
And then as he's about to leave, and Peter says, kill some buggers for me. Mom said, I love you, Andrew. It's not his name. His name's Ender. Then Father said, we'll write to you. But then as he got into the car and waited silently in the corridor, he heard Valentine's anguished cry, come back to me. I love you forever. And that's Ender's game, guys. That's the end. No.
That's
Ender's game. Yep, we did it. In the next episode, we're going to move on to the next book.
Yep.
And yeah, so that kind of establishes the book, gets it going to its launch, kind of like we did with Wrinkle in Time, where we got to the whole blasting off part of the story. We set up the voyage, and we took off from there, and that's what's going to happen when we move on to chapter 4.
I think it really establishes the character of Ender from the point of view of what his family and life was prior to leaving on this journey. So it kind of gives us a good idea of the experiences he will use in the beginning of trying to figure things out after he leaves.
Right, so we are going to call that an episode for this far into the book, and we'll pick it up next week.
I think it's great that when we first talked about it, we were like, yeah, I think we should go to chapter 7 or 8, but man, we like to explore tangents.
Yeah, our last episode was pretty supersized, but we managed to get a whole book into that with all the tangents. If we try to get the entire book into one episode, that would put us probably at like a 6-hour episode, and I don't think any of us have that in us at this point.
Oh,
easily.
not tonight.
Yeah, just reading the book is like 6 hours, or can be like 6 hours. So
yeah, it was like a full Saturday for me one Saturday. So
yep.
Yeah, I don't go on marathon reading sessions, though. I like maybe do 2 chapters in a sitting, and the chapters do get kind of progressively longer in this book as we go on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do have long
yeah.
chapters.
Yeah, but I don't get the opportunity to, I either don't give myself the opportunity or I don't have the opportunity to go on long reading sessions, so it takes me a little bit longer to get through books such as these, but we do have at least the next bit of the book covered, so we'll be able to get you a fresh episode next week. We promise that we'll move a little bit faster, cover a little bit more ground, especially now that we've established the world that Ender lives in. We've established that Orson Scott Card is a religious douchebag.
And we've established that we shouldn't get Harold started.
And we've established that we shouldn't get Harold started.
Have we really explored like how Orson Scott Card's religion is part of how he's talking about the world that we're reading about here?
I think we're giving it as much due diligence as we gave to the fact that Charles Wallace was not Charles Wallace, or he was Charles Wallace, but not at the time.
Are you sure?
Or it. You know what? Krang. It was all Krang.
It was all Krang.
All I know is that both Ender and Charles Wallace could be handled easily with a sidekick.
But you only get one chance to attack Ender, Wiggin.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to pay.
Okay, maybe a front kick on Ender. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
I am excited to talk about this again next week. This is where the book really starts getting good from here on out.
Yeah, it definitely picks up the pace.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. It's got some cool sci-fi-ness to it. It's got some cool characters.
Mm-hmm.
More precocious young children who are some of the most brilliant thinkers, but they don't particularly sound like it.
No.
But,
yeah, we'll get into that. I
mean, they're both, yeah, we'll get into it, but they both talk way above their age and kind of some of them aren't all that bright. But
yeah.
Anyways.
There's a dialect we'll get to that seems to be pervasive all through the different cultures. And it's almost like a human dialect, I would call it. Because no matter what mother language they have, they will degrade into this type of speaking at certain points. Anyhow, yeah, it's interesting.
So yeah, a bit of an amuse-bouche of what we'll cover in the next episode. So nothing in the mailbox this week. Obviously, listeners, feel free to send us messages. Let us know how we're doing. Give us some reviews. We dig that kind of stuff. Another shout out to Matt and Mark from the Matty Ice and Marky Mark podcast. We're still waiting for that response on that Scat Battle Challenge. So I'd say that's going to do it for this episode of ReLiterated. Thanks for listening. This has been brought to you by the Chocolate Milk Friends. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Podbean, Google Podcasts, or any podcatcher app that you want to use. And we'd really appreciate your review and rating on whatever platform you use because it really helps us out. We want to grow. We want to reach more people because we're pretty entertaining. I'm entertained by this. I don't know about you guys.
I'm extremely entertained.
Yeah. Are you not entertained? So yeah, come back next week and we'll continue our discussion on Ender's Game. So until then, give a shit, read some lit.
Goobly doobly doo, good night.
Thanks, everyone.